The year was 2378, and humanity had reached heights no one could have imagined centuries earlier. The stars were no longer distant points of light, but destinations for exploration, trade, and settlement. Billions of people lived beyond Earth, scattered across dozens of planets and moons in colonies that thrived under the protection of the United Galactic Council. Humanity had become a force to be reckoned with, but it wasn't without its challenges. Captain Daniel Carter stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, his ship cruising through the vast emptiness of space. The vessel was sleek and advanced, equipped with cutting-edge technology designed to explore uncharted regions of the galaxy. It was his home away from home, and he took pride in leading such a capable crew. Beside him was Lieutenant Laura Bennett, a brilliant astrophysicist whose calm demeanor masked a fierce determination. She had been assigned to the Horizon because of her expertise in analyzing cosmic phenomena, and she rarely disappointed. Their current mission was routine, or so they thought. A strange energy signal had been detected near the edge of the Andromeda expanse, an area of space infamous for its unpredictable gravitational anomalies. The Council had sent the Horizon to investigate, hoping it might lead to new discoveries or resources. Daniel didn't expect much. Most signals like this turned out to be natural occurrences like pulsars or collapsing stars. Still, he approached every mission with care, knowing that even the smallest detail could change everything. As the Horizon neared the source of the signal, the crew grew restless. Long hours of travel often led to boredom, especially when nothing exciting happened. Ensign Ryan Blake, a young officer fresh out of training, joked about finding alien treasure or encountering extraterrestrial life. His lighthearted comments earned a few chuckles from the others, but Daniel remained focused. He trusted his instincts, and something about this mission felt different. "Captain," Laura said suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice carried a hint of urgency as she stared at her console. "I'm picking up something unusual. It's not a natural phenomenon." Daniel leaned over her shoulder, studying the readings. Sure enough, the signal wasn't random noise, it was structured almost like a language. "Could it be a distress call?" he asked. "It's possible," Laura replied, "but it's weak, fragmented. Whatever sent it is either far away or damaged." Without hesitation, Daniel gave the order to follow the signal. The Horizon adjusted its course, moving deeper into the expanse. As they traveled, the crew prepared for anything, from rescuing stranded explorers to confronting unknown dangers. Each member had their role, and they worked together seamlessly, a testament to months of practice and trust. Hours passed before they finally found the source, a derelict alien ship floating silently in the void. Its surface was scarred with burn marks and dents, evidence of a violent past. The craft was unlike any they'd seen before. Its design suggested it belonged to neither the Vrax nor the Kryn, two powerful alien races known for their hostility toward humanity. Whoever built it had clearly been technologically advanced, yet something terrible had happened to them. "Scan it," Daniel ordered. "See if there are any signs of life." Laura worked quickly, her fingers flying over the controls. After a moment, she shook her head. "No life signs, but there's residual power inside. Some systems may still be operational." Daniel nodded. "We're going aboard. Suit up." A team of 4, including Daniel and Laura, boarded the alien vessel using the Horizon's shuttlecraft. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dark, eerie interior. Emergency lights flickered faintly, casting long shadows across the walls. The smell of burnt metal filled the air, making it hard to breathe without helmets. They moved cautiously, their weapons ready. Every step echoed loudly in the silence, heightening their senses. What they found inside shocked them to the core. The ship's control room contained holographic displays frozen in time, showing maps of star systems marked with symbols they didn't recognize. More alarming were the records stored in the ship's database, evidence of secret meetings between the Vrax and the Kryn. "They've been working together," Laura whispered, her voice trembling. "For years, planning something big." Daniel frowned. "Something aimed at us?" She nodded. "Yes. There are references to Earth, our colonies, and timelines. They're planning an attack." The realization hit them like a punch to the gut. For decades, humanity had assumed the Vraks and the Kryn were enemies, too divided by their differences to unite against a common foe. But here was proof that they had set aside their hatred, at least temporarily, to destroy humanity. "We need to get this information back to Earth," Daniel said firmly. "Now." As they hurried back to the shuttle, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see movement in the shadows. Nothing stirred, but the sensation lingered, gnawing at her nerves. Back aboard the Horizon, the crew reviewed the data, piecing together the horrifying truth. The Vraks and the Kryn weren't just planning an invasion, they were preparing for genocide. Their first strike would come within weeks, catching humanity off guard while they debated politics and funding. Time was running out, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Daniel's shoulders. He knew what had to be done. The Council needed to know, even if some members wouldn't believe them. Humanity's survival depended on acting quickly and decisively. But deep down, Daniel couldn't shake the fear that warning Earth might not be enough. If the aliens struck sooner than expected, or if traitors within humanity's ranks sabotaged their efforts, all hope could be lost. Despite the uncertainty, Daniel made a promise to himself. No matter what happened next, he would do everything in his power to protect the human race. Because if there was one thing he believed in, it was this: humanity might falter, but it would never give up without a fight. And so, with the fate of billions hanging in the balance, the Horizon turned toward Earth, carrying a message that could save or doom the future of humanity. The journey back to Earth was tense and quiet. The crew of the USS Horizon knew they carried information that could change everything, but none of them spoke much about it. Captain Daniel Carter spent most of his time in the command chair, staring at the stars outside the viewport. His mind raced with questions. Would anyone believe them? Could humanity act fast enough to stop the coming attack? He didn't have answers, only a growing sense of dread. Lieutenant Laura Bennett worked tirelessly in the science lab, analyzing every detail of the data they had recovered from the derelict alien ship. She double-checked her findings, ensuring there were no mistakes. If even one council member doubted their claims, it could mean disaster. Laura felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, but she pushed through, determined to leave no stone unturned. When the Horizon finally arrived at Earth's orbit, they were met by a delegation of officials waiting aboard the United Galactic Council station. General Richard Hayes, a grizzled veteran with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, greeted Daniel and Laura personally. He listened carefully as they explained their discovery, his expression darkening with each word. "This is serious," Hayes said after they finished. "If what you say is true, we're looking at an existential threat." But not everyone shared his concern. Senator Margaret Cole, a well-known pacifist, interrupted before Daniel could respond. Her voice was calm but firm as she addressed the room. "We've heard warnings like this before, General. Every time we increase military spending, someone claims it's necessary for our survival. How do we know this isn't another scare tactic?" Daniel clenched his fists under the table but kept his tone respectful. "Senator, I understand your skepticism, but the evidence is clear. We found detailed plans, maps, timelines, even references to specific colonies. They're targeting us and they're doing it soon." Margaret shook her head. "Even if this data is real, how do we know it's current? For all we know, this could be decades-old information. Are we really going to risk destabilizing peace? Talks with the Vraks and Kryn based on speculation?" Her words struck a nerve. Many council members nodded in agreement, and Daniel realized they were losing ground. Laura stepped forward, her voice steady despite the pressure. "Senator, the timestamps on the files are recent. This isn't old data, it's active planning. And if we wait too long to act, it will be too late." Margaret crossed her arms, unmoved. "I'm not convinced. Until we have more proof, I won't support any actions that escalate tensions." The meeting ended inconclusively, leaving Daniel frustrated and worried. As he and Laura walked back to the Horizon, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Margaret's resistance seemed unusually strong, almost rehearsed. Was she deliberately trying to delay action? Back on the ship, Laura, voiced her own suspicions. "Do you think she knows something we don't?" she asked quietly. Daniel sighed. "It's possible. Or maybe she's just playing politics. Either way, we can't count on the council to move quickly." They decided to take matters into their own hands. That night, Daniel sent a secure message directly to Admiral Kenneth Ross, head of Earth's defense fleet. He included copies of the data and a personal plea for immediate mobilization. It was risky. Going over the council's head could get him court-martialed, but Daniel believed it was worth it. Humanity's survival depended on speed, not bureaucracy. Meanwhile, tensions grew among the crew. Rumors spread about spies aboard the Horizon. Ensign Ryan Blake became a particular target of suspicion. Since joining the mission, he had always been eager to prove himself, but lately, his behavior seemed off. He avoided eye contact during briefings, lingered near classified areas, and once, Laura caught him accessing restricted files without permission. She mentioned her concerns to Daniel, who agreed it was strange but urged caution. "We don't have proof," he said. Accusing him without evidence would only create panic. Still, Laura couldn't ignore her instincts. She began keeping a closer watch on Ryan, noting every unusual move. One evening, while reviewing security footage, she noticed something alarming. Ryan had entered the engineering bay late at night and tampered with one of the communication relays. When confronted, he claimed he was running routine diagnostics, but his nervous demeanor told a different story. Before Laura could report him, the situation escalated. A sudden malfunction caused the Horizon's navigation systems to go offline, forcing them to drop out of faster-than-light travel prematurely. The timing was too convenient to be a coincidence. Daniel ordered a full investigation, and soon, evidence pointed squarely at Ryan. Faced with irrefutable proof, Ryan confessed. He admitted to being a sympathizer of the Vraks, secretly working to undermine humanity's efforts. "You don't understand," he pleaded. "They promised peace. If we surrender now, they'll spare us." Daniel stared at him, anger and disappointment written across his face. "Peace doesn't come from betrayal, Ensign. You've endangered everyone on this ship, and possibly the entire human race." Ryan was placed under arrest, but the damage had already been done. The sabotage delayed their return to Earth by several days, giving the enemy more time to prepare. By the time the Horizon reached Sol Station again, reports were coming in of increased Vraks and Kryn activity near the border. Ships were amassing, weapons being stockpiled. The signs were undeniable. War was imminent. General Hayes wasted no time. Ignoring Margaret's protests, he declared a state of emergency and began rallying Earth's forces. Fleets were recalled from distant sectors, and reserve units were activated. Factories switched from civilian production to manufacturing military equipment. The entire planet buzzed with activity as humanity prepared for the fight of its life. But preparation wasn't easy. Years of budget cuts and political infighting had left Earth's defenses weaker than they should have been. Many ships were outdated, and training programs had been scaled back. Supplies were scarce, and morale was low. Even so, people worked tirelessly, driven by the knowledge that failure meant extinction. Amid the chaos, Daniel and Laura found themselves thrust into new roles. The Council officially recognized the Horizon as a key asset in the coming conflict, assigning it to reconnaissance missions along the border. Their job was to gather intelligence and disrupt enemy operations wherever possible. It was dangerous work, but both accepted it without hesitation. Before departing on their first mission, Daniel addressed the crew. "We've faced tough odds before," he said, his voice steady, "and we've always come out on top. This time won't be any different. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for everyone back home, for our families, our friends, our future." The crew cheered, their spirits lifted by his words. Laura stood beside him, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Despite the challenges ahead, she believed in their mission, and in humanity's ability to overcome even the greatest threats. As the Horizon launched into the unknown, Daniel allowed himself a moment of reflection. The road ahead would be brutal, filled with sacrifices and heartbreak. But one thing was certain: Humanity wouldn't go down without a fight. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, with courage, determination, and hope. And somewhere, deep inside, Daniel made another promise to himself. No matter the cost, he would ensure that humanity survived. Because if the aliens thought they could crush the human spirit, they were gravely mistaken. There would be no mercy for them. The USS Horizon moved silently through the darkness of space, its engines humming softly as it approached the border between human-controlled territory and the Vrax-Kryn alliance. The crew worked tirelessly, their movements precise and efficient. Every member knew the stakes. Failure meant not just their deaths but the potential collapse of humanity's defenses. Captain Daniel Carter stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the viewport as stars streaked past. He felt the weight of leadership more than ever before, knowing that every decision he made could tip the balance. Lieutenant Laura Bennett sat at her station, poring over sensor data. Her fingers danced across the console, analyzing patterns in enemy ship movements. "They're massing near the Xylos belt," she reported, her voice calm but urgent. "Hundreds of ships, Vrax cruisers, Kryn carriers, even some unknown classes we haven't seen before." Daniel nodded grimly. "That confirms it. They're preparing for a full-scale assault." He turned to Ensign Alex Monroe, the pilot who had earned a reputation for quick thinking during skirmishes. "Plot a course to get us closer without being detected. We need eyes on their fleet." Alex gave a sharp nod. "Aye, Captain." His hands moved deftly over the controls, adjusting the ship's trajectory to take advantage of nearby asteroid fields and nebulae. These natural obstacles would help mask their presence, giving them a chance to gather vital intelligence. As the Horizon slipped into position, tension filled the air. The crew exchanged glances but said little, each person focused on their task. Even minor mistakes could expose them, and none of them wanted to think about what would happen if they were caught. The Vrax and Kryn weren't known for mercy. Hours passed as they observed the enemy fleet from a safe distance. Laura zoomed in on one particular vessel, a massive command ship surrounded by smaller escorts. "That has to be their flagship," she said, pointing to the screen. "It's heavily armed and shielded. If we can disable it, we might cripple their coordination." Daniel studied the image carefully. "It's risky, but worth considering. Let's keep gathering intel for now. We'll need every advantage we can get." While the crew monitored the enemy, whispers of betrayal continued to haunt them. Though Ensign Ryan Blake was now locked away in the brig, his actions still cast a shadow over the mission. Some crew members questioned whether others might share his sympathies. Trust, once so strong among them, now felt fragile. Daniel noticed the subtle shifts in behavior, the way people avoided certain conversations or glanced sideways at colleagues they used to joke with freely. Laura tried to ease the tension by organizing group meetings where everyone could voice concerns. "We're all in this together," she reminded them. "If we let fear divide us, we'll lose before the fight even begins." Her words helped, but the unease lingered. People worked harder, slept less, and kept to themselves more often. The strain of knowing an attack was imminent weighed heavily on everyone. Back on Earth, preparations continued at a frantic pace. Admiral Kenneth Ross oversaw the mobilization of fleets, coordinating efforts across multiple sectors. Factories churned out weapons and supplies around the clock, while civilians volunteered in droves to support the war effort. Despite the chaos, there was a sense of unity, a shared determination to protect their home. But not everyone supported the mobilization. Senator Margaret Cole remained vocal in her opposition, accusing the military of exaggerating the threat to justify increased funding. She held rallies and gave speeches, urging citizens to resist what she called reckless militarism. Her arguments gained traction among some groups, particularly those who feared another prolonged conflict after decades of relative peace. Unbeknownst to most, Margaret's rhetoric wasn't entirely her own. She had been secretly meeting with the Vrax ambassador, feeding him classified information about Earth's defense strategies. In return, he promised leniency for humanity if they surrendered quickly. Margaret convinced herself she was acting in humanity's best interest. believing that resistance would only lead to greater suffering. But her actions ensured that when humanity finally acted, they would be woefully unprepared. Meanwhile, on the front lines, scientists raced against time to counter the Kryn bioweapon. Dr. Emily Dawson, a virologist stationed at a research facility on Mars, worked day and night to decode samples smuggled from captured enemy probes. The weapon was unlike anything she'd ever seen, a virus engineered specifically to target human DNA. Once released, it would spread rapidly, leaving victims incapacitated within hours. Emily's lab was a blur of activity. Assistants ran tests, analyzed results, and prepared new batches of experimental treatments. Sleep became a luxury few could afford. Yet despite the pressure, Emily refused to give up. "We have to find a way," she told her team. "If we don't, billions will die." After days of relentless effort, they made a breakthrough. Using fragments of the virus's genetic code, they developed a prototype antidote. It wasn't perfect, it required large doses and had unpredictable side effects, but it offered hope. Emily immediately transmitted instructions for mass production to surviving medical facilities, ensuring the treatment could reach as many people as possible. As these efforts unfolded, the Horizon completed its reconnaissance mission. Armed with detailed scans of the enemy fleet, Daniel and Laura devised a daring plan. They would infiltrate the Vrax Kryn flagship, planting explosives deep within its core. If successful, the explosion would destroy the command ship and disrupt the invaders' ability to coordinate their attack. "This is suicide," Alex muttered when Daniel explained the plan. "Even if we make it inside, how do we get out alive?" "We don't leave anything to chance," Daniel replied firmly. "We go in fast, hit hard, and exfiltrate before they know what hit them." Laura added, "And we won't be alone. Admiral, Ross is sending reinforcements to create a diversion. With luck, they'll draw attention away from us long enough to complete our objective." The crew prepared for the mission with grim determination. Weapons were checked, suits sealed, and escape routes memorized. Everyone understood the risks, but no one hesitated. This was their chance to strike back, to show the enemy that humanity wouldn't go down without a fight. As the Horizon approached the flagship under cover of darkness, Daniel addressed his team one last time. "This isn't just about survival," he said, his voice steady. "It's about proving that we're stronger than they think. Stronger than anyone thinks. Let's show them what humans are made of." With those words echoing in their ears, the strike team boarded a shuttlecraft and headed toward the enemy vessel. The journey was tense, each second stretching endlessly as they neared their destination. When they docked, silence greeted them, a foreboding quiet that sent shivers down their spines. Armed and ready, they stepped onto the alien ship, their footsteps muffled by the thick metallic floor. Shadows loomed around every corner, and the air smelled faintly of ozone. Ahead lay danger, uncertainty, and the possibility of failure, but also, perhaps, victory. For Daniel, Laura, and the rest of the team, there was no turning back. They had chosen this path knowing it might cost them everything. And though fear lurked in their hearts, they pushed forward, driven by a single unshakable belief: humanity's spirit could never be broken. No matter the odds, they would fight. Because if the aliens thought they could crush humanity, they were wrong. There would be no mercy for them. The strike team moved cautiously through the dimly lit corridors of the Vrax Kryn flagship. Every step echoed softly, blending with the faint hum of alien machinery. Captain Daniel Carter led the way, his weapon raised and his eyes scanning for any sign of movement. Behind him followed Lieutenant Laura Bennett, Ensign Alex Monroe, and a redeemed Ryan Blake, who had reluctantly agreed to assist in exchange for leniency after his betrayal. The air was cold and metallic, carrying an unsettling stillness that made their skin crawl. They weren't alone. Security patrols roamed the ship, but so far they had managed to avoid detection. The mission depended on stealth. If the enemy realized they were aboard, their chances of success would plummet. "This place gives me the creeps," Alex muttered under his breath, gripping his rifle tightly. "Feels like it's watching us." Laura nodded but kept her focus on the map displayed on her wrist console. We're close to the reactor core, just a few more junctions. Her voice was calm, though her hands betrayed her nerves as she adjusted the settings on her scanner. Daniel glanced back at Ryan, who lagged slightly behind the group. Stay sharp, he said firmly. If you mess this up again, I won't hesitate to leave you here. Ryan swallowed hard but nodded. He knew he didn't deserve another chance, but he also understood the gravity of what was at stake. For once, his loyalty wasn't divided. He wanted to make things right, even if it meant risking his life. As they rounded a corner, the sound of footsteps froze them in place. A squad of Kryn soldiers approached, their insect-like exoskeletons glinting faintly in the low light. The team pressed themselves against the wall, holding their breath as the patrol passed by without noticing them. When the coast was clear, Daniel motioned for them to keep moving. They reached the reactor chamber minutes later, slipping inside through a maintenance hatch. The room was massive, dominated by a towering energy core pulsing with an eerie green glow. Thick cables snaked across the floor, connecting the core to various control panels scattered around the perimeter. It was exactly where they needed to be. Plant the charges here, Daniel instructed, pointing to key structural points near the base of the core. Make sure they're evenly spaced. We want this thing to collapse completely. Alex and Ryan set to work, attaching explosive devices while Laura monitored the area for signs of trouble. She kept one ear tuned to the comms channel, listening for updates from Admiral Ross's fleet. The diversion was supposed to begin soon, drawing enemy forces away from the flagship and giving the team a window to escape. How much time do we have? Daniel asked quietly. 5 minutes until the attack starts, Laura replied, checking her chrono. After that, we'll have about 10 minutes before reinforcements arrive. Daniel nodded. Then let's move fast. The explosives were almost in place when alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Red warning lights flashed overhead, bathing the chamber in harsh crimson hues. Someone had discovered their presence. Damn it, Alex cursed, fumbling with the last charge. We're out of time. No, we're not, Daniel snapped. Finish the job. Laura, cover us. Laura took position near the entrance, her weapon trained on the corridor outside. She could hear shouts growing louder as enemy forces closed in. Hurry up, she called over her shoulder. With seconds to spare, Alex secured the final charge. Done, let's go. But as they turned to leave, a squad of Vrax warriors stormed into the chamber, blocking their exit. Their armor gleamed menacingly in the flickering light, and their weapons crackled with energy. There was no way past them. Daniel stepped forward, raising his hand slowly. Stand down, he ordered, his voice steady despite the odds. You don't want to do this, the Vrax commander sneered, speaking in guttural tones that translated automatically through their helmets. You think you can stop us? You are nothing but insects. Before Daniel could respond, Ryan surprised everyone by lunging at the nearest soldier, grabbing his weapon and firing wildly. Chaos erupted as the rest of the team joined the fight. Bullets and plasma bolts ricocheted off walls, filling the chamber with smoke and deafening noise. Despite being outnumbered, the humans fought with desperation. Alex used the environment to his advantage, ducking behind consoles and launching counterattacks. Laura provided covering fire, her aim precise and deadly. Even Ryan, driven by guilt and a desire to redeem himself, held his ground, taking down several enemies before being disarmed. When the dust settled, the team stood victorious, but battered. Ryan lay unconscious on the floor, injured but alive. The others dragged him along as they made their way toward the extraction point, knowing they couldn't afford to leave anyone behind. Outside the flagship, the battle raged fiercely. Admiral Ross's fleet had arrived as planned, launching a bold assault on the Vrax Kryn armada. Explosions lit up the void as ships clashed in fiery displays of destruction. Pilots maneuvered skillfully, using asteroid fields and debris clouds to gain tactical advantages. Commander Alex Monroe's squadron performed daring maneuvers, targeting larger enemy vessels and sowing confusion among their ranks. On Earth, civilians braced for impact. Cities were evacuated, shelters filled to capacity, and emergency broadcasts urged people to stay calm. Among those left behind was Dr. Emily Dawson, who continued working tirelessly to distribute the antidote for the Kryn bioweapon. Using hacked communication satellites, she coordinated efforts with medical teams across the globe, ensuring the treatment reached as many people as possible. Admiral Ross remained at the forefront of the battle, leading from the bridge of the USS Vanguard. His voice boomed over the comms channel, rallying his troops. "Hold the line," he shouted. "For every colony, for every life, they will not take our home." The fighting was brutal. Entire squadrons were wiped out and key installations fell one by one. Yet humanity refused to yield. Pilots sacrificed themselves to protect others. Engineers worked miracles to repair damaged ships mid-battle, and soldiers on the ground prepared makeshift defenses, determined to hold their ground. Back aboard the Vrax Kryn flagship, Daniel and his team finally reached the shuttlecraft. As they climbed aboard, Laura initiated the launch sequence while Daniel manned the controls. Enemy fighters pursued them, firing relentlessly, but the shuttle's agility allowed them to weave through the chaos. Just as they broke free of the flagship's gravity well, the explosives detonated. A brilliant flash illuminated the darkness as the command ship imploded, sending shockwaves rippling through space. Debris flew in all directions, crippling nearby vessels and throwing the enemy fleet into disarray. "We did it," Alex breathed, slumping into his seat. "We actually did it." But Daniel shook his head. "Not yet. This is just the beginning. We've bought ourselves some time, but the war isn't over." As the shuttle sped toward the safety of friendly lines, the crew exchanged weary smiles. They had accomplished the impossible, striking a critical blow against the invaders. But none of them believed the victory would come easily. The cost had already been immense. Ships destroyed, lives lost, and there was no telling how long humanity could hold on. Still, amidst the devastation, a spark of hope remained. Humanity had proven itself capable of great courage and resilience. Even faced with overwhelming odds, they refused to surrender. And though peace might remain elusive, one thing was certain. If the aliens dared to underestimate them again, they would learn the hard way. There would be no mercy for them. The destruction of the Vrax Kryn flagship sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet, both literally and figuratively. The massive explosion crippled dozens of nearby ships, scattering debris across space like a deadly storm. For a brief moment, chaos reigned among the invaders. Their command structure had been shattered, leaving them disorganized and vulnerable. Admiral Kenneth Ross seized the opportunity. From the bridge of the USS Vanguard, he ordered a full-scale assault on the remaining enemy forces. Humanity's fleet surged forward, their smaller, faster ships weaving between the larger alien vessels. Pilots executed daring maneuvers, targeting weak points and exploiting the confusion caused by the loss of the flagship. Commander Alex Monroe led his squadron with precision, diving into enemy formations and unleashing barrages of missiles that tore through hulls and shields alike. Despite the sudden advantage, the battle was far from over. The Vrax and Kryn regrouped quickly, rallying around secondary commanders who stepped up to fill the void left by their fallen leaders. Reinforcements poured in from deeper within their territory, tipping the scales back in their favor. Humanity's forces were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with a ferocity born of desperation. Every shot fired, every ship destroyed, was a testament to their determination to protect their home. Back aboard the shuttlecraft returning from the flagship, Captain Daniel Carter watched the unfolding battle with a mixture of pride and dread. The crew had done the impossible. They had struck a devastating blow, but it wasn't enough. He could see the toll the conflict was taking on Earth's fleet. Ships exploded in fiery bursts, sending shrapnel spiraling into the void. Escape. Pods jettisoned from doomed vessels, carrying survivors into the cold emptiness of space. Laura Bennett sat beside him, her face pale but resolute. "We gave them a chance," she said softly. "But it's not going to be enough, is it?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at the carnage outside the viewport, his jaw clenched. Finally, he spoke. "Not unless we keep fighting. We've shown them we're not an easy target. Now we have to prove we're unbeatable." Ryan Blake stirred in the seat behind them, groaning as consciousness returned. His injuries were minor compared to what they could have been, but guilt weighed heavily on him. When he realized where they were, he looked down at his hands, trembling slightly. I don't deserve to be here," he muttered. "You don't," Daniel replied bluntly. "But you earned this second chance when you helped us take out that flagship. Don't waste it." Ryan nodded silently, his expression grim. Whatever doubts or fears still lingered in his heart, he resolved to push them aside. If humanity survived, this day he would spend the rest of his life making amends. As the shuttle docked with the USS Horizon, the team prepared to rejoin the fight. Daniel contacted Admiral Ross, updating him on their success and offering any assistance the Horizon could provide. "We'll hold the line," Ross assured him. "Just stay ready for orders." Meanwhile, on Earth, civilians faced the grim reality of war. Cities lay in ruins, their skies darkened by smoke and ash. Emergency broadcasts urged people to seek shelter, but many refused to abandon their homes. Among them was Dr. Emily Dawson, who continued working tirelessly to distribute the antidote for the Kryn bioweapon. Her lab had become a makeshift production facility, churning out doses as fast as possible. Volunteers streamed in to help, some trained medical professionals, others ordinary citizens willing to do whatever it took. They packaged vials, loaded transport shuttles, and coordinated deliveries to affected areas. Emily barely slept, driven by the knowledge that every second counted. "We can't stop," she told her team during a rare break. "Even if it feels hopeless, we have to keep going. Every dose saves lives." Her words inspired those around her, and together they pushed through exhaustion and despair. Slowly but surely, the antidote began reaching more people. Reports came in of infected individuals recovering, their symptoms easing thanks to the treatment. It wasn't a cure, but it bought humanity precious time. On the front lines, the battle raged on. The loss of the flagship had dealt a significant blow to the Vrax-Kryn alliance, but they showed no signs of retreating. Waves of enemy fighters swarmed Earth's fleet, overwhelming defenses and forcing retreats. Admiral Ross fought valiantly, coordinating attacks and counterattacks with relentless determination. Yet even he couldn't ignore the growing casualty count. "Sir, we're losing too many ships," one of his officers reported, his voice strained. "If this keeps up, we will hold," Ross interrupted sharply. "We don't have a choice. Fall back to Sol Station if you must, but do not let them reach Earth." His resolve spread through the ranks, bolstering morale even as hope seemed to fade. Soldiers and pilots pushed themselves beyond their limits, knowing that failure meant annihilation. In the cockpit of a damaged fighter, a young pilot named Sarah Collins whispered a prayer before launching herself into another dogfight. She knew she might not survive, but she also knew her sacrifice could save others. Amid the chaos, Laura devised a risky plan. Using data gathered during their infiltration of the flagship, she identified critical weaknesses in the enemy fleet's formation. By targeting specific ships and systems, they could create chain reactions that would amplify the damage inflicted by Earth's forces. It was a long shot, but it might just turn the tide. When Daniel heard her proposal, he didn't hesitate. "Do it," he said firmly. "Whatever it takes." The Horizon moved into position, its weapons primed and its crew ready for action. Laura worked feverishly at her station, feeding coordinates to the gunners and guiding the ship through treacherous terrain. Explosions rocked the vessel as enemy fire slammed into its shields, but the crew held steady. "Firing now," Laura announced, her voice steady despite the tension. The Horizon unleashed a barrage of torpedoes, striking key targets with pinpoint accuracy. One by one, enemy ships collapsed under the strain, their destruction triggering cascading failures. Throughout the fleet, Admiral Ross saw the opportunity and capitalized on it. Ordering a concentrated assault on the weakened sections of the enemy line, he rallied his remaining forces for one final push. "This is it," he shouted over the comms channel. "For Earth, for humanity." The fleet surged forward, pouring everything they had into the attack. Ship after ship fell until finally the Vrax-Kryn forces began to retreat. Their once mighty armada was reduced to scattered remnants fleeing into the depths of space. Cheers erupted across the battlefield as humanity claimed victory, or at least a reprieve. Exhausted but triumphant, the survivors gathered what remained of their fleet and limped back toward Earth. The cost had been catastrophic, but they had endured. Aboard the horizon, Daniel allowed himself a moment of reflection. Looking out at the battered ships and drifting wreckage, he felt a mix of sorrow and pride. So much had been lost, yet so much had been saved. Humanity had proven itself stronger than anyone, including their enemies, had believed. Laura joined him on the bridge, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. "We did it," she said quietly. "Against all odds." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, but this isn't the end. Not yet. They'll be back. And next time, we need to be ready." She glanced at him, understanding the weight of his words. The road ahead would be long and difficult, filled with rebuilding, mourning, and preparing for future battles. But for now, they had earned a moment of peace, a chance to breathe and heal. As the horizon drifted silently through the aftermath of war, Daniel made a silent promise to himself. No matter how hard the days ahead might be, he would never stop fighting for humanity's survival. Because if there was one thing this battle had taught him, it was that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its technology or weapons, but in its unyielding spirit. And somewhere deep inside, he knew something. Else, if the aliens ever dared return, humanity would be waiting. There would be no mercy for them. The victory was bittersweet. Earth's fleet limped back to Sol Station, battered and broken but alive. The USS Horizon docked alongside other surviving ships, its hull scorched and dented from the battle. Captain Daniel Carter stepped onto the station with heavy boots, his face lined with exhaustion. He had seen too much loss, ships destroyed, friends killed, entire colonies wiped out. But he refused to let despair take hold. Humanity had survived. That alone was worth fighting for. "Lieutenant," Laura Bennett followed close behind him, her mind racing with thoughts of what came next. She knew the war wasn't over. The Vrax and Kryn might have retreated, but they would regroup. They would return stronger, angrier, and more determined than ever. Humanity needed to prepare, and quickly. Admiral Kenneth Ross greeted them in the command center, his usual stern demeanor softened by gratitude. "You did good," he said simply, clapping Daniel on the shoulder. "All of you. We wouldn't be standing here without your actions." Daniel nodded, though he felt no pride. "It's not enough," he replied. "We stopped them this time, but we can't rely on luck forever. If we don't rebuild our defenses and unite our people, the next attack will finish us." Ross agreed. "That's why I've called an emergency session of the United Galactic Council. Everyone needs to hear what happened here, not just the politicians, but the public. They need to understand what's at stake." Senator Margaret Cole, however, remained a thorn in their side. Despite the overwhelming evidence of the alien threat, she continued to downplay the danger, accusing the military of exaggerating the situation to justify increased funding. Her arguments gained traction among some groups, particularly those who feared another prolonged conflict after decades of relative peace. But her influence was waning. The destruction wrought by the Vrax-Kryn alliance had left no room for denial. Margaret's betrayal was eventually uncovered when intelligence operatives intercepted communications between her and the Vrax ambassador. The revelation shocked the council and the public alike. Arrested for treason, she defended herself fiercely, claiming she had acted in humanity's best interest. "I wanted to avoid war," she shouted during her trial. "I thought surrendering was better than extinction." Her words fell on deaf ears. The damage she had caused was undeniable, and she was sentenced to life imprisonment. For many, it was a sobering reminder of how fragile trust could be, even among those entrusted with leadership. Back on Earth, the aftermath of the battle was devastating. Cities lay in ruins, their skies darkened by smoke and ash. Refugees crowded into makeshift shelters, seeking safety from further attacks. Dr. Emily Dawson worked tirelessly to distribute the antidote for the Kryn bioweapon, traveling between medical facilities to ensure supplies reached those in need. Her efforts saved countless lives, but the scars of the attack would linger for generations. Reconstruction began slowly but steadily. Factories that had once produced civilian goods switched to manufacturing weapons and ships. Training programs were expanded, preparing new recruits for the inevitable next conflict. Civilians volunteered in droves, offering whatever skills they had to support the war effort. Even children pitched in, collecting scrap metal or helping care for the wounded. Amid the rebuilding, a renewed sense of unity emerged. People who had once argued over politics and policies now stood together, bound by a shared determination to protect their home. Flags bearing Earth's insignia flew proudly in every settlement, a symbol of resilience and hope. On the horizon, Daniel and Laura prepared for their next mission. Though the immediate threat had passed, they knew reconnaissance would be critical in preventing future attacks. Their orders were clear: patrol the border, gather intelligence, and strike preemptively if necessary. It was dangerous work, but neither hesitated to accept it. Before departing, Daniel addressed the crew. "We've been through hell," he began, his voice steady despite the fatigue in his eyes. "And we'll probably go through worse before this is over. But I want you all to remember something. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone back home. For our families, our friends, our future. No matter how hard it gets, we don't give up. Ever." The crew cheered, their spirits lifted by his words. Laura smiled faintly, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Despite everything they had endured, she believed in their mission, and in humanity's ability to overcome even the greatest threats. As the Horizon launched into space, Daniel allowed himself a moment of reflection. The road ahead would be brutal, filled with sacrifices and heartbreak. But one thing was certain: humanity wouldn't go down without a fight. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, with courage, determination, and hope. And somewhere, deep inside, Daniel made another promise to himself. No matter the cost, he would ensure that humanity survived. Because if the aliens thought they could crush the human spirit, they were gravely mistaken. There would be no mercy for them. Months passed and the galaxy settled into an uneasy calm. The Vraks and Kryn licked their wounds, retreating to their territories to rebuild. Humanity used the reprieve wisely, strengthening its defenses and forging alliances with other species who shared their distrust of the invaders. Trade routes reopened cautiously, and diplomacy became as important as warfare. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered. Spies reported increased activity near enemy borders, suggesting preparations for another assault. Admiral Ross remained vigilant, refusing to let his guard down. "They'll come back," he warned during a council meeting. "And when they do, we'll be ready." Laura spent her days analyzing data, searching for patterns that might predict the timing of the next attack. Her work was meticulous, driven by the knowledge that even a small oversight could cost lives. When she wasn't in the lab, she trained, with the rest of the crew, honing her combat skills and learning to pilot shutcraft. If the aliens returned, she intended to fight alongside her comrades. Ryan Blake, meanwhile, struggled to find redemption. Though he had earned a second chance, aboard the Horizon, guilt weighed heavily on him. He threw himself into his duties, working longer hours and volunteering for the most dangerous assignments. Over time, his efforts began to earn the respect of his fellow crew members. They didn't forgive him easily, but they acknowledged his determination to make amends. One evening, as the Horizon drifted silently through space, Daniel joined Laura on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, beautiful yet indifferent to the struggles of those below. For a moment, neither spoke, content to simply gaze at the vastness of the universe. Finally, Laura broke the silence. "Do you think we'll win?" she asked softly. "Not just this war, but everything. Do you think humanity has a future out here?" Daniel considered her question carefully. "I don't know," he admitted. But I do know this. We won't quit. No matter what happens, we'll keep fighting. That's who we are, and maybe that's enough. Laura nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Yeah, maybe it is. As they stood there watching the stars, a transmission crackled over the ship's comm system. An unfamiliar voice, distorted and cold, echoed through the speakers. This is Commander Zorath of the Vrax fleet. Your defiance ends today. Surrender or face annihilation. The message sent chills down their spines. The aliens had returned. Without hesitation, Daniel turned and sprinted toward the bridge, Laura close behind him. The crew sprang into action, preparing for battle. This time, they were ready. This time, they would show the invaders exactly what humans were made of. There would be no mercy for them.